All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for today's webinar brought to you by the NYC Department of Consumer and Worker Protection and WorkWell NYC. Today's topic is What's New with Student Loans Summer 2024 Update. Before we begin, I'll review a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, and we will be sharing the recording and slides with you all after the session. We have some experts who've joined us today to answer your questions. If you have any questions that come up, please use the Q&A button to type in and submit your question. Please reserve the chat for any comments or thoughts. We do have some time for live Q&A at the end, but it is unlikely that we will be able to get to every single question in the limited amount of time that we have today. However, we will be sharing some additional resources that you can utilize to help you get the individualized support that you may need. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Anna Tan, and I'm the Assistant Director of Programs at WorkWell NYC at the Office of Labor Relations. I am joined by my colleagues, Heidi Kabusora, Director of Policy and Research at the Office of Financial Empowerment at the NYC Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. I'm also joined by Amy Zulata, the Outreach and Advocacy Manager at the Student Borrower Protection Center. And last but not least, Katie Crumpter, Coordinating Senior Financial Counselor of the Financial Empowerment and Advocacy Unit at the New York Legal Assistance Group. And now I'll tell you a bit about WorkWell NYC. We are the Worksite Wellness Program for all City of New York employees. At WorkWell NYC, our goal is to help you move more, eat well, take action, and be well. We also have Project Build, which stands for Building Understanding, Inclusion, Learning, and Diversity, and that is our health equity initiative, which today's webinar is a part of. So some of you may be wondering, what do student loans and financial wellness have to do with health equity and well-being? Well, it is no secret that people who experience financial or economic hardship are at higher risk of having worse physical and mental health outcomes. For example, data shows that people who struggle with managing their finances may have increased levels of stress and anxiety, and that in turn can translate to having increased risk of chronic conditions such as diabetes or hypertension, and they may also experience poor sleep quality and a weaker immune system. WorkWell NYC takes a holistic approach to health, and we hope today's webinar supports your journey to financial empowerment. I will now turn it over to Heidi to introduce DCWP.
Thanks, Anna, and the WorkWell team for your continued collaboration and the opportunity to speak today to so many of our city colleagues. The New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, you may know us under our former name, DCA, protects and enhances the daily economic lives of New Yorkers to create thriving communities. We look to pioneer the way that city government can protect and enhance the lives of all players in the marketplace, including consumers, businesses, and workers, and how that work ultimately fosters stronger, more sustainable, and thriving communities. The Office of Financial Empowerment's mission is to educate, empower, and protect New Yorkers with low income so they can build assets and make the most of their financial resources. You may have seen ads for our signature programs, one at the top of the year, New York City Free Tax Prep, where you can have your taxes filed for free. We did over 100,000 earlier in 2024. And we're going to speak later about another leading program, the Financial Empowerment Centers. Anna, if you could, next slide. So today I'm joined by two truly fantastic experts in the field, Amy and Katie, to help us walk through a wide range of student loan updates. We'll be speaking about public service loan forgiveness, an update on some recent student loan news related to PSLF, the Fresh Start Initiative, the IDR account adjustment, and some additional resources, both financial empowerment and student loan focused, and then we will save plenty of time for Q&A. So just a quick note before we get started, We again are lucky to have hundreds of city employees join us today during their lunch hour. And in our previous webinars, we've also had hundreds and hundreds of questions, often on a bar's unique situation. As Anna mentioned, we encourage you to post questions in the Q&A box and raise them in the Q&A section later. But as a heads up, we typically try to answer the questions that apply to the broadest audience. And we strongly advise you to seek out the one-on-one supports that we're going to highlight at the end so that you can get the right answer for your particular student loan situation. And again, the PowerPoint will be distributed to everyone after the webinar. So we're going to kick off with some recent PSLF news with Katie.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is very exciting to be here today to talk to you all about student loans. And I remember there was a time not that long ago that student loans were kind of boring, but it feels like every day we have some more news related to student loans, at least since Biden became president. And it's all, most of it is very good news. But this recent stuff was that last month on July 18th, a federal appeals court issued a stay preventing the Department of Education from operating SAVE. So as a result, everybody who was on SAVE as of July 18th was put into administrative forbearance. It's a 0% interest forbearance. So no interest will accrue during this period. However, and you don't have to take any action. You may have received an email probably the first week of August that explained this to you. There's no action for you to take. But the one note is that this period will not count towards PSLF forgiveness. And so you probably received an email within the past several weeks telling you that you're on a 0% interest forbearance, won't count towards PSLF. If you're very close to PSLF, we may want to take an action. There are other income-driven repayment plans that you could be on, but that's a conversation with a financial counselor, most likely. Next slide. The other bit of news that you also may have received an email about, this email may have come at some point in July, I think, sometime in the middle of July, they were sending out this email. This is related to a new plan to cancel student loan debt. This is equivalent to what President Biden was trying to do with the student loan cancellation, the $10,000 or $20,000 he did shortly after becoming president. And then the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. So this is thought to replace that. Over the past, I don't know, 9 months to a year, a number of people were working to make new rules and going through a process to create forgiveness. And if implemented, they will be implemented in the fall. And if they are, they will authorize partial or full student debt relief under the following circumstances. If you owe more than you did at the start of repayment, so if your loans have negatively amortized, as in that balance is higher than what you initially took out, then that amount could possibly be forgiven. If you entered repayment 20 or 25 years ago, depending on whether the debt was undergrad or grad, it's possible you will be eligible for full forgiveness. If you are eligible for other types of forgiveness, but you haven't applied or you don't have the right payment plan, then you may be eligible. And if you enrolled in low financial value programs, or like if this is a school that has lost their accreditation and ability to take student loans, you may qualify for forgiveness based on that. So if you want to be included, you don't have to take any action. If you do not want to be considered, then you have to opt out by August 30th. So you have to contact all your servicers and let them know you want to opt out, but just a quick answer to the question, why would you want to opt out of forgiveness? If you were very close to receiving another type of forgiveness, for example, for you guys, public service loan forgiveness, if you're like only a month away from that and you're going to get full forgiveness, and if you lived in a state that was going to tax other types of forgiveness, you may want to opt out of this type of forgiveness. There are several states, I don't know how many, maybe 7 states or so, that will tax federal student loan forgiveness. New York is not one of them. New York follows the federal, the IRS on this. So at least until the end of 2025, no student loan forgiveness will be taxable in New York. And after that, public service loan forgiveness is never taxable. So it's only other types of forgiveness. But if you wanted to opt out, you must do that by the end of this month. So those are the 2 emails that you probably have gotten over the past month. As I said, one came probably in the middle of July, this one came in the middle of July, and the other one about PSLF probably came several weeks ago. And that's all I have on these 2 slides.
Thanks, Katie. So before I start, we just want to acknowledge that many of you may be restarting your student loan payments after many years, and this can be a scary and intimidating process. So we thank you for joining today so that you can get more information about the student loan landscape. And we're going to kick off with a great program for public service employees. And as always, work well, and we love a poll. So we're going to ask whether or not you are enrolled currently in PSLF. So feel free to pick an option on the poll, and then we'll publish the results as soon as we get a critical mass. Great. Well, it sounds like almost 40% are already enrolled in PSLF, so this will be a refresher for you. As you know, it's an annual process. And for those who haven't started or know or are unsure, we're going to do our best to get you the content and information so that you know how to actually enroll in the program and move through that process. Thanks for your answers. Next slide, thank you. So what is public service loan forgiveness? We'll refer to it as PSLF throughout this program. It is an initiative run by the U.S. Department of Education for government student loan borrowers. As a federal program, it is designed to reward borrowers in public service. So, spoiler alert, basically everyone currently listening as an employee of the city, you are eligible for PSLF. You do have to be a borrower with direct loans, or you have consolidated other federal student loans into a direct loan. You must be paying under an eligible income-driven repayment plan. And that includes the newest one, the SAVE plan, which is under reconsideration at the moment. But you want to make sure you are paying under the correct IDR plan. And I just want to note that direct loans, most loans that have been issued since 2010 are direct loans. Next slide, thanks. So how does it work? If a borrower makes 120 payments, which is approximately 10 years of qualifying payments, and the borrower is still employed by a public service employer when they have applied after that last payment, whatever you have left, whether it's $100, $10,000, or $250,000, it will be completely forgiven. And as Katie helpfully mentioned, there will be no tax consequences to New York State residents. We put in the blue text box at the bottom, this may be one of the most significant financial transactions that you do. To date, the average amount for a New York State resident is over $61,000 for those who are successful applicants. The next criteria is whether your student loans qualified. And we've included a chart of eligible versus ineligible loans. You'll see on the left side under eligible, they all start with direct. So all those loans that have been issued since 2010. And then under ineligible loans, well, I'll just jump to the last one. So private student loans are ineligible. And the 3 remaining ones with asterisks next to them, Fell, Perkins, and Direct Plus loans to parents are ineligible, but there is an option to make them eligible if they are consolidated. If you don't know what your loans are, you can go to studentaid.gov and we put the link in there to access your account. So I know I already said that if you're listening, you can apply and you're eligible, but we wanted to include the specific information for your friends and families at next week's barbecue, lunches or parties. So eligible employers include U.S. federal, state, local, or tribal government or not-for-profit organizations, 501c3s, and federal service does include U.S. military service. Qualifying payments include a monthly payment while you were employed full-time by a qualifying employer after October 2007. You were paying under a qualifying repayment plan, an IDR or other temporary expanded PSLF, and you are paying full amount due on the monthly bill, so no partial payments. Or you were in an accepted deferment or forbearance, and that included COVID-19 and CARES period. Payments do not need to be consecutive or to the same employer. And now I'm going to hand it over to Amy, who's going to do a walkthrough of the enrollment process.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Salata. I'm the Outreach and Advocacy Manager at the Student Borrower Protection Center. Thank you so much to WorkWell NYC and the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection for having me today. We're going to walk through how to submit the paperwork for PSLF. It's a fairly simple process, and the Department of Education has made it a lot simpler over the years. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes online. The first step is logging into studentaid.gov and selecting the PSLF help tool. You must be currently working in the public service at the time that you submit your paperwork. There are 5 steps within the process, within the help tool, and they all must be completed at the same session. Borrowers are not able to save work and continue their forms at a later date. They'll have to restart or start over. Once borrowers complete their end of the forms will be sent to their respective employers for signatures. Next slide. This is what the landing page will look like for the PSLF help tool. Have all of your information ready when you start the process so that you don't get stuck or have to go looking for it in the middle of the process. Next slide, please. When you're logging employment information, make sure the dates of employment are correct and make sure that you use the same date format throughout the process. Remember that you can have multiple part-time jobs over a period of time that get you over that 30 hours a week threshold. So you can add multiple employers for the same period of time if needed. Next slide, please. To find your employers, you'll need their employer identification number or EIN to find them in the database. Here's the EIN for the City of New York, but it may be different for different agencies, like for the Department of Education and H&H. You may also have past employment that you could also certify, and you'll need your EIN for that as well. So you can find your employer's EIN by looking at your W-2, by asking your employers, or in some cases by Googling them. Next slide, please. Many different organizations might come up for the same EIN, so you may need to sift through several pages of potential employers before you find the one that pertains to you. If you're unable to locate a past employer, there is an option to find or to submit a form manually. If your employer doesn't come up when you do the search, it does not necessarily mean that they are ineligible. It could mean that no one else from your past place of employment has ever submitted PSLF forms, so it's not in their system yet. Don't panic, especially if you know your employer is a government agency or a 501c3 nonprofit and you know that they're eligible. To do this, you'll need to download the PSLF form, complete it, get a signature, and then send in the form. Here are some other tips for completing this form. Make sure you fill it out completely and write NA for anything that doesn't apply. We recommend submitting PSLF forms once a year while you're in qualifying employment. This way you can catch any mistakes that are made in real time and deal with them as they happen. Keep copies for your own records and follow up with your employers to get the forms signed. This slide also has the information for sending the form to the Department of Education here. So take notes if that applies to you. After you submit the forms, they are processed by the Federal Department of Education. So you'll see your payment count updated on your studentaid.gov dashboard. To get signatures, borrowers are able to send the forms electronically right from the PSLF help tool. This is probably the easiest and quickest way to get signatures. Employers will have 60 days to sign the forms. Other acceptable signatures include hand-drawn from a signature pad, mouse or finger, scanned photo of a signature that was hand-drawn on paper, a wet signature that was drawn on an ink and sent in its original format, like an old-fashioned pen and paper. And finally, here's the process for PSLF. Once you submit forms to the Department of Education, they will check to see that you have the qualifying loans and qualifying employment. Remember to submit your form every year while you're in qualifying employment. The process is the same whether you're certifying your employment for the first time, recertifying it, or certifying it for the last time. They will then determine how many qualifying payments you have made over the course of your eligible employment. You'll then receive a letter notifying you of the number of qualifying payments you have. You'll only see that count get updated on your dashboard when you submit new PSLF forms. Once you've made the 120 qualifying payments, or 10 years worth of payments, you'll receive forgiveness for the remaining balance of your loans. You can find your most up-to-date payment count at studentaid.gov. Remember that there was a PSLF processing pause this summer, and there's still a backlog of forms to be processed, so form processing can take a few months.
Thanks, Amy. I'm going to cover a different program, a program for borrowers in default called the Fresh Start Initiative. And I'm going to highlight a very important upcoming September deadline. Now, no group of borrowers may be more intimidated by this complicated process of managing student loans than those who are currently default. In fact, 7 million borrowers with federally managed loans were at least 30 days overdue on their payments at the end of 2023. Fresh Start is a one-time temporary program for borrowers with defaulted federal student loans. It takes you out of default and returns you to quote unquote in repayment status. It removes the record of your default from your credit report and allows you to get back on track with a new repayment plan. You can also regain the ability to apply for PSLF and other loans. You can restore access to federal student aid, the stops collections, and you become eligible for other student loans, such as those that are related to federally backed mortgages. We've listed here the options for enrolling into Fresh Start, and you must do this by September 30 of this year, so just over 5 weeks. We've listed online, phone, and mail options, and under the mail, we've also included sample language for you to use when making the request. So send it back to Amy.
Thanks, Heidi. We also wanted to just take a minute to review something called the IDR account adjustment. This is a one-time audit of all accounts to see how much credit borrowers have under income-driven repayment plans. Basically, the Department of Education is reviewing all federal borrowers' accounts to see how close folks are to, toward the 20 and 25-year thresholds for getting cancellation of their loans under IDR plans. Basically, if you only have undergraduate loans and you've been in repayment for 20 years, and you've been in an income-driven repayment plan, you can get your loan, the remainder of your loans canceled. If you have a mixture of undergraduate and graduate loans, it gets triggered at the 25-year mark. So this one-time account adjustment is set to run on September 1st of this year. And the Department of Education will be counting some periods of forbearance and deferment, and they'll be counting any time spent in repayment, regardless of whether or not a person made a complete payment or whether that payment was made on time. And all of this time counts for public service loan forgiveness as well. Borrowers should see their accounts updated automatically with this information sometime after September 1st of this year. I will pass it back now. Thank you.
So we're going to cover some resources that are available for city employees. I'm going to actually kick it to one. We love all of our financial empowerment centers, but Katie, who is joining us for her student loan expertise, is a particular favorite financial counselor of ours. Katie, if you want to go ahead and describe what you do every day.
Sure, thank you. One of my major projects is working with the financial empowerment centers, and we can help you lower your monthly payments. We can talk about loan forgiveness. We can work on a budget. Anything related to your personal finances, we can discuss with you. Every single person on this webinar is eligible for free financial counseling. You just have to work or live in New York City. And there are no income limits. So if I'm typing an answer and I'm saying you should probably book an appointment with a financial counselor, it's not just me, they're all over the city in every borough. And you can book an appointment through the link I'm sending, like in the chats, or by just calling 311. So give us a call and try to book up an appointment. We can definitely help with all kinds of things, not just student loans, but we do help a lot with federal student loans. And somebody just asked if there are different language options, and yes, whatever language is your language, we can, we absolutely have Spanish speakers, but we can also get an interpreter if it's not Spanish or a language that we actually have a native speaker for.
So before we jump into Q&A with Katie and Amy, we wanted to highlight the resources that we have profiled in the slides. They include both general student loan information, including DCWP's website on student loans, Student Borrower Protection Center. Also, the specific links to PSLF, IDR, and Fresh Start so that you can explore them on your own. And so I'm going to pass it back to Amy and Katie to kick us off with Q&A.
Excellent. I'm just going to take this first question because I think it's important. Somebody asked what happens if you submit your annual form late, and I'm assuming that this is related to your income-driven, your IDR plan certification. And so if you don't submit your IDR plan certification timely, you will be put back on a standard plan, but you can always get back onto an income-driven repayment plan. If you're talking about the public service loan forgiveness form, like your employment certification form, there's no real deadline for those. We just recommend that you submit them annually.
Thanks, Katie. So following on this kind of a PSLF track, folks are asking like, what if they haven't made 10 years of payments yet and they just started with the city? You can apply for PSLF anytime. Essentially, when you submit your form, you're raising your hand, you're telling the federal government, I'm interested in public service loan forgiveness, and I want the time that I have to count for PSLF right now. And another thing that's really nice about PSLF is that this time doesn't have to be consecutive. So say you work for the city now, you want to get that time on the books so that it's counted. And it's just easier if you submit forms as soon as possible as you're interested. But say you leave and you move to the private sector for a bit, that's okay. That time in the private sector won't count towards PSLF, but you never know what might happen in your career. And so you can get more time to count if you ever went back in the public service at a later date. And so it's just a matter of like documenting your time as it's happening, just to remain on track so that you know where you're at in the process. And so you can submit forms at any time.
I'm also going to take a few of these questions. Somebody's asking, I've worked for several years and I never applied. Can I still get those payments to count? Somebody's asking, I did this, they're asking about, you know, I don't start work until next year. So a couple things. One, and no, somebody's asking if you can make 120 payments in less than 10 years. So first, any job that you have had that is qualifying employment, that you had a student loan during that qualifying employment, even if it was from 10 years ago, you can now apply for PSLF and get that qualifying employment to count towards your 10 years. So it doesn't matter. There's not like a timeliness thing in that. The only timeliness issue is that you actually have to currently still have student loans. So you have to have some balance of student loans, and then you can apply. And as long as you had those student loans at the time of the employment, then you can apply for past historical employment. You also cannot you cannot receive forgiveness in less than 10 years. It can take as long as it takes. You just have to get 120 months of payments, but you cannot get credit for more than one payment a month. There are a few exceptions, and there are, like, you can buy back months. I also want to mention something about the buyback thing. You can only do that if buying those months will lead to forgiveness. So it's only at the time of forgiveness, like that you're gonna, like, buying those months is gonna get you to forgiveness. Sorry, Amy, I wanted to get like a bunch of similar questions that were kind of in that area.
No, that's so helpful. I wonder if we could spend a few minutes talking about direct or Parent Plus loans next. We've seen a couple of questions about Parent Plus loans in the chat. And so just clarifying that Parent Plus loans, you know, for the most part, qualify, they are direct loans in most cases. And so they qualify for PSLF. So you're able to get PSLF with Parent Plus loans. Remember that one of the requirements of PSLF is that you're in the right type of repayment plan. And the most affordable plans for people are often these income-driven repayment plans. The only payment plan that Parent Plus borrowers are eligible for is the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, or the ICR plan. And they're only eligible for that once they consolidate their loans. And so, you know, just it's something to keep in mind, because the ICR plan is the least generous of those plans, of those IDR plans. So another option for folks might be to stay in the standard plan, which is a plan that has you paying, it's not an income-driven repayment plan, but it has you paying off the entire balance of the loan in 10 years over time. But given that we were just in a payment pause where folks weren't making payments for 3.5 years, this is going to be something to consider. So I think if you're a Parent Plus borrower, something to think about and maybe run through your options are, is it more affordable for me to remain on the standard plan, or is it more affordable for me to be on the income contingent repayment plan if I'm seeking PSLF in the long run? Another question we got on these Parent Plus loans was whether or not the loan can be transferred to the student, to the son or daughter that took out the loans, or that you took out the loans for. And this is not an option, unfortunately. Once Parent Plus loans are in the name of the parent, they're not able to be transferred to anyone else. Certainly, you know, the child could be making payments, you know, or like help you make payments on those loans, but the loan itself is not able to be transferred. Katie, I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts on Parent Plus loans that I'm missing here.
I mean, I think that people are, I just want to mention, they think that they're not eligible for income-driven repayment plans, and they are, but they do first have to be consolidated, as Amy just mentioned. They're not eligible for the best payment plan, but that doesn't mean that, as Amy said, it may make, if you do already have a couple of years, your standard, and the loans aren't large, your standard payment may be better. But I don't have anything really about the Parent Plus, other than that it doesn't qualify for SAVE. So if you're asking about that, there is one way that's still open if you have your own loans and Parent Plus loans, but it's complicated, and I wouldn't, you want somebody to be working through that. So if you do have your own loans and Parent Plus loans and you want to get them all on SAVE, work with a financial counselor or somebody with EdCap. I also want to mention that as far as somebody who's still in school, but I guess his attendant is working for the city, and they want to know if they should apply for PSLF now. I would say no. You probably just want to stay on your in-school deferral for the time that you're in school. You could waive your deferment period, but you know, SAVE is complicated and you can't get on that today. So I would say keep your in-school deferment for as long as you have it. And maybe by the time you're done with school, we'll have an answer about what's happening with SAVE and all the other changes that Biden was trying to make to the student loan program.
Yeah, I think I just I saw a question about whether folks should opt out if they're close to getting PSLF. So just going back to this debt relief email that folks got. So remember that President Biden announced debt relief. It went through a process called negotiated rulemaking. We're at the point where these final rules are almost out. And so the Department of Education sent out emails, you know, asking folks if they want to opt out, they have to do it by August 30th. And so someone asked if they should opt out of it if they're close to PSLF. That's a really good question. So these two programs are separate and you can receive both of them. And so you don't need to opt out of the debt relief that's coming down the pike in the fall, you know, once these final rules are out. And like you can also receive PSLF. And so, you know, it could, you know, create a situation where maybe they waive some of the interest on your student loans through this debt relief plan. And then your monthly payments are lower, but you still get PSLF in 2 years when your 10 years is up. And so, you know, I just want to mention that these two things are separate and you can get both of them. And we're still awaiting those final rules, but it's good news that folks can receive both.
Somebody's asking, you know, what they've applied for PSLF, they don't have enough payments, so what happens? So just so you know, there is no assumption of ongoing employment once your public service loan forgiveness form is submitted. So let's say you submitted a form a year ago and your employer signed it. So the city signed it in August of 2023. And that was in or whatever, and you have your account, it's on studentaid.gov, and you can see that you have 110 payments on studentaid.gov. That only is through August of 2023. And so they don't know that you're still working for the city. That's why our best recommendation is to submit your public service loan forgiveness employment forms annually, or like when you're up to 120. You don't have to do it every month. We say do it once a year. And then this person, who I said had 110 payments, I just made this person up, as of August 2023, they probably should have submitted another form at some point, like after May, because then they would have had 120 payments. And then they're requesting forgiveness. So that's why you want to submit your form annually. And then it will update your, or when you change jobs, it will update your payment count annually.
Thanks, Katie. I think maybe if we could spend a minute, where I'm seeing a lot of questions about the SAVE litigation and what this means for folks. And so I just want to spend a minute on that. So this has been a lot of back and forth over the past few months. It's caused a lot of gray hair for people, understandably. So you'll remember President Biden implemented the SAVE plan. We spent a minute on this. You know, this offered lower monthly payments for folks. It cut a lot of folks' payments in half. It offered a shortened timeline for cancellation so that people could, you know, they didn't have to wait that 20 or 25 years. They could get cancellation between 10 and 19 years, depending on how much they took out initially. And so this plan was really, really good. It was a step in the right direction. And two lawsuits were filed that encompassed like 18 attorneys general across the United States. And so this ongoing litigation has really put a damper on a lot of things recently. And so it's been back and forth on whether the SAVE plan can be implemented or not. Right now, we're at the stage where it is basically completely blocked by an 8th Circuit court. And so they're not able to implement early cancellation for folks. There's no lower payments for folks and no waiver of interest, which is one of the big benefits of the SAVE plan, is that once you made a payment, your interest was waived. And that was a huge problem for folks initially because they were making payments, but they weren't seeing their balances go down. And so just want to clarify again that borrowers who were enrolled in SAVE have been placed in a non-interest bearing forbearance. So there's no interest accruing on your account, but that forbearance time, it does not currently count towards PSLF or IDR cancellation. This is something advocates are pushing for and working on, because, you know, we know that that's really damaging for a lot of folks. Also, if you submit a SAVE application, you're going to be placed in that, you know, administrative forbearance. And you can apply for other IDR plans at the moment, but the only way to do that is through a paper application. And so it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be a little bit onerous on the borrower. So right now it is, you know, very tenuous. The situation is tenuous, but this is kind of the layout of the SAVE litigation as it stands right now. Katie, I don't know if you have anything to add or anything I missed.
I do not have anything to add. I do just want to say that the Department of Justice has filed a request to get rid of this injunction, or at least most of the injunction. They probably would still keep it on actually the SAVE portion, but they're being prevented from doing things that they've been doing for the past 8 months, and that's not the way an injunction is supposed to work. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a little bit more news, but the truth of the matter is these are all headed to the Supreme Court, and they are really not on this side, although this is very different. I want to be clear. This is very different than the SAVE plan, and everything is very different than what Biden was trying to do with the HEROES Act and forgiving $10,000 or $20,000. But it may not matter to the Supreme Court that this is different, but I don't see anything happening before the election, to be honest.
Yeah,
also-
I think that, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Amy.
No, I think that that's right, that they're headed for the Supreme Court. And what we know about the Supreme Court is that, you know, this could take a long time. You know, it might not be heard until next spring, might not be a decision until next summer. So, you know, we could be in this for the long haul. And I just wanted to flag that I put in the chat that we have a lawsuits page on our cancelmystudentdebt.org page. And we're trying to update that as regularly as possible because we know that there's new news every week. And so, you know, check that out for kind of the latest information on what this means for the SAVE plan going forward.
Yeah, so somebody's also asking, and I think this is about the IDR adjustment. They're saying, you know, why is the total account towards forgiveness been delayed multiple times? It's September and first it was April. I think this is related to the IDR adjustment, and you're right, everything has been taking longer over the past 2 years, and the Department of Education has expected it to. And I think actually it's primarily related to the fact that there have been a number of lawsuits. There have been a lot of lawsuits that have tried to stop various things related, not specifically to the IDR adjustment, the IDR one-time adjustment, which is weird that they haven't tried to stop that. But regardless, there have been so many lawsuits, and that has created these, wide forbearances that they have to put everybody in the whole student loan program on. So that has necessarily created pauses in the other work that they were doing. So there's lots of different moving pieces that's happening with the Department of Education. And so I'm not surprised that it's been delayed. And the truth of the matter is we're glad that it's been delayed, because this has allowed them to delay other things. Like at first you had to consolidate your loans by December of 2023 in order to receive historical credit on those loans. And then it went, several extensions of that made it all the way through the summer. So I don't necessarily, I understand the anxiety that this produces and the fear that this means that this isn't really happening. But I think what we can see is that 4 million people have received forgiveness from the Biden administration over the past 3 years. And this is all coming, or a good chunk of it is, what they can do will be done. And anything that doesn't get done is just related to the Supreme Court sort of preventing it from happening.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Katie. I'm seeing a question about how PSLF and IDR work together. And so they're wondering if, like, if you're making an IDR payment, does that still count for PSLF? And so I just want to clarify that, like, public service loan forgiveness and IDR, income-driven repayment plans, they're separate, but they work together. So, in most cases, the most affordable plans for folks in PSLF will be these IDR plans, and there are 4 of them currently. And so there's 4 different plans. If you're wondering kind of how these different plans might make your monthly payment go up or down, you can use the loan simulator tool available at studentaid.gov to kind of get a ballpark idea of like what your monthly payment might be under each of these different plans. But so, you're making plans in income-driven repayment in one of those plans, and you're able to kind of accrue credit towards PSLF by making payments on those plans. And so, you are enrolled in an IDR plan, but working towards public service loan forgiveness. That's kind of how they work together traditionally. So just wanted to clarify that they're separate, but that they're friends. They work together.
Somebody's asking if you're married and you file jointly, does your payment plan only include your income, or does it include both your incomes? And if you file jointly, they're looking at both of your incomes. If only one of you has student loans, it may make sense, and you're going for public service loan forgiveness. And so the goal would be to pay as little as possible. Then it may, for many of you, makes sense to file your taxes married filing separately and then have your payment plan calculated only on your income. It may not. And the truth of the matter is, you may have to do this calculation annually. You're gonna have to calculate your taxes both ways, calculate your payments both ways, and that's gonna determine whether or not which one makes sense. Again, a financial counselor can help you with this, or your tax person can help you with this. But it is something that if you're married, you probably should be looking at, because you want to pay as little as possible, and that should be your goal.
Someone's asking about when or how they'll know if a recertification form is due. And so I'm going to talk about two things that this might be related to. So one is that if you're in an income-driven repayment plan, you have to recertify your income every year, so that the government knows how much to charge you in your student debt. That you'll get a notification from your servicer saying, like, it's time to recertify your income. Plug in your numbers, and that's what'll happen. If you're talking about PSLF certification, that you won't get any kind of notification on that. This is just what we recommend, that you submit your PSLF forms every year so that if there are problems, you can kind of catch them. And so you won't receive any notification on that. That's just something that you'll need to remember to do. But if you don't do it every year, that's okay. Like, you can also do it at the end of 10 years. It's just that we know that there have been a lot of problems and servicer mismanagement on all of these things. And so doing it every year, gives you the leg up in knowing, like, okay, my servicer made a mistake, now I need to correct it. And so unfortunately, the student loan servicing system requires a lot of vigilance on the part of borrowers. And so that's what really the yearly certification for PSLF is about.
Somebody's asking if they were previously working for a qualifying employer, but they were not on an income-based repayment plan. They were on a 10-year standard. Will those payments count? And yes, so qualifying payment plans, Amy mentioned, are any income for public service loan forgiveness purposes, are any income-driven repayment plan and a 10-year standard plan. So I will just say, though, generally speaking, the standard isn't 10 years unless your payment balances are fairly low. A lot of times the standard payment plan will be for a longer period of time based on your loan balances. But if it was truly a 10-year standard payment plan, then it will absolutely count in normal times and as far as the IDR adjustment is concerned. So the person who asked this question is asking about historical things, and so that will count because of the IDR adjustment, but it would also count today because the 10-year standard counts normally. Now, it many times may not make sense unless you have at least a couple of years or at least 1 year of repayment that not on a 10-year, already embedded. But yeah, 10-year standard plan counts towards public service loan forgiveness. And you should should submit your PSLF form, even if you don't have 10 years, because at some point, maybe you will. I'm assuming that this person is now working for the city, and that is qualifying employment. So your past job and this current job, maybe you will at some point have 10 years.
We're also getting a question about the PSLF being dismantled altogether under a new administration. And I think it's a really good question given the political moment that we're in. I understand that there's a lot of anxiety about these court cases, what they mean for folks, and what to anticipate moving forward. For public service loan forgiveness in particular, this was a bipartisan program that was established by Congress. And so it is much firmer than some of these other executive actions or things that the president has done kind of one-off under his authority. And so, you know, I think that the likelihood of PSLF being dismantled is very, very slim. Of course, we can never predict the future, but you know, this was bipartisan. This was an act of Congress. This, you know, has support on both sides of the aisle, and so I think that the likelihood of that is very slim.
Yeah, it can't just be undone by the, I mean, I guess the Supreme Court can undo all of our laws, but they will not completely undo PSLF. And it was put in place by a Republican president, for whatever that matters. I mean, it was Bush who was the president when PSLF was passed. But yeah, who knows what's gonna happen with Congress, but it would have to be a new law. There's no, even though Republicans and the GOP in general does not like forgiveness, they also don't want to take away something that's been around for 20 years. So, you know, I don't see that happening. Somebody is asking a question. I'm not really sure. I'm assuming that they're asking because their income is relatively low and they've been requesting annually a deferment or a forbearance related to their income. That is something that you should not be doing. You should not, I mean, you can request a forbearance, but if your income is low, or even below, it's not even like with SAVE, it's not, well, I guess SAVE doesn't, we can't really talk about that right now, but if your income is low, your payment will be $0. If you're on cash assistance, your payment is $0 and it will count towards getting IDR forgiveness or not PSLF, because if your income is 0, you don't have qualifying employment, but it will count towards other forgiveness programs. So if you have low income and you think you can't afford to pay your student loans, you should be on an income-driven repayment plan, because that payment will almost certainly be $0.
I see another question about being a contractor for the city. I just want to clarify that for PSLF, unfortunately, contract work does not count. It matters who's on your W-2. So the city of New York has to be on your W-2 in order for that work to count. I know that this has been on the table before in other rulemakings, and maybe we'll see it again in the future, because this is a point of contention for folks, that they're doing, like, you know, public service work. They just happen to be doing it for a contractor, and so keep an eye out for maybe that'll change at some point. But for as of right now, contract work does not count for PSLF.
Okay, we're gonna do 2 more questions. I'm gonna pick one and then Amy's gonna pick one, and then we'll do a little wrap up. So just, I think somebody's like, there may be some confusion because we have been talking a lot about a lot of different things, and we may have given some people are questioning whether or not they should be making payments at all. So I will tell you that if you were on prior to, as of July 18th, so that's 6 weeks ago, if you were on the SAVE income-driven repayment plan, then you absolutely 100% are on a 0% interest forbearance. If since July 18th you have applied for SAVE, they may have sent you paperwork that you have to fill out manually, like paperwork, but they will have also put you on this 0% interest SAVE. If you were on any other income-driven repayment plan and or a standard repayment plan, you probably are not on a forbearance, and you probably do have payments due. Go to your servicer's website, see if you have a payment due. That's going to be the best thing to tell you whether or not you should be making payments currently.
That's helpful, Katie. Thanks. I think a similar line of thread, or folks are asking if a $0 payment counts as payments. You know, if you qualify for a $0 payment and you're enrolled in an IDR plan, that's your payment for the month. So it functions as like no payment, but it is a payment. And so it does count, you know, for PSLF and other things. And just speaking to Katie and the confusion that people are feeling, you know, we feel it too. This is really, really a frustrating time to be navigating the student loan system. And so, you know, some advocates, because of the state litigation, are really advocating that the student loan system should be shut down right now, because it's just impossible to kind of give people information about what's going to happen even in the next few months. And so, you know, just, you know, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to the information, because we know it's a lot to navigate right now.
I also want to say one thing. You should be submitting your PSLF forms. Like, that's separate from payments and making payments, and everything is now on studentaid.gov. So you should still be submitting PSLF applications and your employment certifications. If you haven't done one in a while, if you haven't done one in over a year, definitely do one. There's no reason not to submit those forms. That's not really what all of these injunctions and the problems with the payments that the system is about. So there was this weird period, but that was just because they were transitioning from showing it on Mohella's site to moving it to student aid. But that's over now, and so everybody should still submit their PSLF forms. So I'm going to pass it back to Anna. Are you going to do a little wrap up, or Haiti maybe?
All right, yes, back to me. So thank you, Katie and Amy, for the very robust Q&A. So once again, thank you for all of you who attended, for listening in. Definitely was a lot of information that was covered. So of course, please don't hesitate to make an appointment with the Financial Empowerment Centers to speak with a counselor. And one other friendly reminder, for those of you who are enrolling in PSLF or certifying employment, please do not contact WorkWell NYC in order to do this. So in the past, we've received some inquiries asking WorkWell NYC to certify their employment. Unfortunately, we are not able to do that. So please speak with an HR official at your agency. They will be able to assist you and make sure that you have someone at your agency who is able to certify your employment. Once again, WorkWell NYC is not able to certify anyone's employment for PSLF. And so we'll just quickly close out with a few upcoming events. So if you are interested in learning more about financial wellness, this month we have our Boost Your Budget Challenge. It's not too late to sign up for that. We have a series of financial wellness videos covering a variety of topics, and we have a community discussion group for that tomorrow as well. If you sign up to join, you'll get all the information to access that. And relatedly, on August 29th at 12 p.m., we have a live Q&A session with our money coach, Kara Stevens. Kara is the one who is featured in our financial wellness videos for the Boost Your Budget Challenge, and we think that'll be a great discussion. So please be sure to visit our website on.nyc.gov/upcoming events to get all of the details to sign up and join. And just wanted to quickly mention another benefit available for city employees. We have a partnership with Weight Watchers, and city employees have access to a subsidy that reduces the cost of membership by more than 50% off the regular price. So visit on.nyc.gov/Weight Watchers to learn more information there. And of course, we invite you to join our mailing list. You'll be the first to hear about all of our upcoming events and programs and get access to various wellness resources. You can sign up by scanning the QR code on the screen, or you can visit on.nyc.gov/mailing list. And lastly, we will close out with 2 quick anonymous polls. So at WorkWell NYC, we want to improve the quality of our programs and make sure we are meeting all of your wellness needs and interests. So please take a moment to respond to the anonymous poll. How would you rate the overall quality of this program? And the options are poor, fair, good, very good, or excellent. And again, responses are anonymous. All right, so thank you for responding to the poll. So I think we can close this one down and move to the next one. All right, and so one final poll. Did participating in this program increase your knowledge of the health and wellness topics presented? And the options here are yes, no, I don't know, or not applicable. And so one moment while we get the poll up on the screen for you. Let's see. And if the poll, let's see. Estrella, did we close the previous poll?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. All right, there it is. You should see the poll on your screen now. So please take a moment to respond. And again, it is anonymous. And so while you all are taking a moment to respond to the poll, I just wanted to once again thank my colleagues on the call. Thank you to Haiti, Amy, and Katie for this very informative webinar. And of course, thank you to the WorkWell NYC team and the DCWP behind the scenes. Thank you to all the people who contributed to this webinar today. And again, for all of you who attended, we definitely encourage you to enroll in PSLF and or certify your employment annually and be on track with getting your student loans forgiven. All right, and lastly, there are many ways to stay in contact with WorkWell NYC. We invite you to follow us on Instagram or on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at workwell@olr.nyc.gov. And again, as a reminder, today's presentation has been recorded, so we will be sharing the recording and slides with you all, and you can view the recording when it is ready on our YouTube or Vimeo pages. So thank you all for joining us and hope you have a great afternoon. All right, so thank you. Take care, everyone.